Welcome. I am Eric Barnes with the Daily Memphian, CEO of the Daily Memphian, and thank you for joining us for the Women in Business Seminar, which, of course, during COVID, we are having to do remotely and virtually, but we really do thank you for being here. We have three guests today who will be talking about their experiences, women in business, and sharing those experiences and sharing a bit of their story as we go through the seminar today. You'll also be able to ask questions of all three of our guests. You can do that by if you're watching this on YouTube, there's a chat function kind of right below or right next, depending how you're looking at it, right next to the video. Just put a question in there and I will eventually get to it, I promise. Or if you're watching this on the Daily Memphian site, if you just click on the headline and go to the article in which the video is embedded, there's a comment section at the bottom. And if you put a comment in there, I will be able to get that question to our guests. Normally, we do 6 or so seminars, sometimes 7 a year on commercial real estate, small business, developing Memphis. We've done ones on healthcare. We've done them on money and markets. Kind of just depends on what's going on. It has obviously been a strange year, and we've done a bit fewer this year. But you can go back and watch our commercial real estate seminar, our developing Memphis seminar, and our small business seminar, all done in the fall, all done virtually. Just search for them on the Daily Memphian site, and you get the past video and the past conversations. Again, we'll be getting to speakers very soon. For now, though, we want to thank all of our sponsors who made this possible. We'll have messages from each of them as we go through the presentation today. First up is Landmark Bank.
Landmark Community Bank is glad once again to partner with the Daily Memphian and other sponsors to bring the Women in Business Seminar to you. Whether you are looking for personal, business, or mortgage banking, Landmark would appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. Give us a call or visit our website at lcbtn.bank.
Thank you. Go.
Again, thank you to Landmark Bank. Our first speaker today is Cindy Brewer, principal and co-founder of Leo Events. Cindy, thank you for joining us. Thanks for doing this virtually. We're looking forward to what you have to say today.
Thank you. I've been doing a lot of virtual meetings, it seems like, since COVID.
Go ahead and let's hear your story and talk a bit about, again, we sort of do this as the Women in Business Seminar, which goes in lots of different directions, and I probably have some questions for you. And again, to everybody listening, if you have questions for Cindy, just put them in the comment section on the Daily Memphian site, or if you're watching on YouTube, use the comments. But I will shut up and turn this over to Cindy.
Thank you, Eric. I'm a born and raised Memphian, a proud graduate of the Hutchinson School. I think they're a sponsor. I saw that. I got started in this business by way of a communications degree from college into hospitality and tourism, and doing tourism sales for everything from American Airlines to the Nashville Zoo to then landing with Hard Rock Cafe. This was before the pictures were on the menu at Hard Rock Cafe, when they were one of the first to step forward to sell the venues for convention events, for offsite events. And that was kind of a big deal. They were one of the first ones to step out and do that. So I started experiencing my passion for wanting to do events and the sales and business development of that. And that led me to an offer to come to Memphis and open Hard Rock Cafe in Memphis in 1997. And the rest is kind of history from there. I realized that after Hard Rock, I went to Beale Street, worked with John Welkington for a long time doing the events for Handy Park and the parades, and loved every minute of that, and started to realize that there was a hole in the market. And there was a hole in the market for someone to service inbound meetings and conventions in Memphis. And this was in 2000, and there was the first expansion of the convention center, the renovation. It was a prime time to start a business, and I did. Actually got the business license on September 11th of 2001, and just went forward from there. We started as a company called Destination King, K-I-N-G, Elvis Beebe, nod to Martin Luther and Jerry King Lawler and everybody that came out of Memphis. and started servicing inbound conventions. And basically, my company was a company called a destination management company, and it's a familiar industry to call on somebody to then do your offsite events and your transportation and your tours and develop those products for you when you are meeting in a particular destination. But the company quickly grew to where we were doing turnkey meeting management and event management services. We started doing AutoZone's incentive. We started doing meetings outside of Memphis, and merged with another company in 2012 that was highly skilled in production and public events and ticketing. And that's when Leo Events was formed in 2012. So we do large scale corporate events. As of a year ago, we were doing them all live. Now we have pivoted to virtual. We're very thankful that the virtual world is surviving. That all of our clients have asked us to do virtual in the interim. They're all very eager to go back live. And we're starting to see a trend where a lot of them are stepping forward as early as June to say, we're ready to go live in some type of hybrid environment. So we have 50 employees that we're headquartered in Memphis, women-owned business, and we have offices in Nashville and Chattanooga, and we have freelancers and part-timers that are all over the nation as well. We're fortunate, some of our biggest clients, Walmart, Sherwin-Williams, that we're doing a lot of meetings and events for right now, and Nissan and several others. So we've been quite busy. It was a rough Q2 for us, like it was for a lot of people. But thankfully, we had a digital product, and being able to carry that over into this new norm that we're all in had us all kind of regroup as an organization, and here we are today.
Thank you. I a few questions just from me here, and then we'll do a big Q&A at the end with you and with Monica and with Lori. But just specific to your business, I mean, I can't imagine a business has been hit. I mean, there are a few. I mean, but that you do live. Your primary business was live events.
Yeah.
How was it? And you work you're based here, but you have offices in Nashville and Chattanooga.
Right.
And you work with companies all over the place. Was there a major difference in the response based on location and where the companies you worked with was? I mean, were some companies like, hey, we're ready for in person? Others totally shut down. I mean, different states, different localities have had different rules throughout this.
So we were loading in for a very large Walmart show in San Antonio, Texas last year at this time, actually, when Walmart said, I mean, we can't do it, we're done. And then once we got to March 15th, I mean, basically everything that we had on the books, we had 4 major festivals, national festivals, gone in the blink. All of our corporate clients were calling us saying, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Because at that point, they were trying to get out of contracts with convention centers or hotels. I mean, they just knew, that they weren't going to be able to do live. So there was a lot of trying to service our clients to figure out what none of us knew. And then to make the decision that, yeah, we still need to meet, we'll do it virtual.
Yeah. One more business question, the second half of our title today. Well, that we've all sort of found things, whether it's our personal life or in our businesses, there are things that, I mean, this has been horrible and stressful and difficult. There are certain things we've probably all found that we will continue to do and things we will not go back to. And I'm curious for you, from a business point of view, things you won't go back to and things that you've learned that you will carry forward in terms of how you all operate or things you do.
Well, we've certainly lost things that we don't think will come back anytime soon. I mean, live meetings will come back, but we had a whole transportation services department that did major movements. And right now, no one's getting in major motor coaches and things like that, unfortunately. And so that's kind of on the table right now. We don't know what that's going to happen. For us, I think, when we talked about event safety a year ago, we were worried about a lone sharpshooter in a venue. That was event safety. And those are things that we were focused on. Event safety is so much more now. I mean, we're having to get our employees or getting certifications in event safety management, pandemic management. You're having to worry about your attendees, you're having to worry about your vendors, you're having to worry about the venue and the venue policies, and all things that bring people together in an event, because just one person can carry, as we've learned, sickness all across a venue very quickly, and or a conference. So yeah, health was not something that was really on our radar to worry about a year ago, and it's top of our mind right now.
Last question, and again, this is central to your business, but so you may be a little biased, and that's fine in your response. But I mean, what is your sense of post-pandemic, critical mass of vaccinations? Some people feel like, oh, people are, the era of business travel and conferences and association meetings are really, we're not really going back to that. Is that your sense, again, with full disclosure that you are certainly, that's a part of your business, but what is the sense? I'm sure you see industry surveys, you see all kinds of things, that are people eager to get back to conferences and associations that are in person, not virtual?
They are, and I can tell you from an objective side, we meet every 2 weeks with corporate meeting planners for brands all over the US, big national brands, and we have a conversation that lasts an hour. Those that are the big brands, like I can use FedEx as an example, they're not even back in their office yet. So until they get everybody back in their office, you won't see companies like that start to even consider live events. Where your mid-level businesses that have started to acclimate people back into the offices are very comfortable in making those live decisions and making them now. Our industry is just absolutely dying to get back. And there's so many players trying to do everything in their power to make that happen. So we're very hopeful.
Okay, we will come back. More questions for Cindy in the Q&A with all the guests today. Again, you can ask questions if you're watching on YouTube, you can use the chat function. If you're watching on the Daily Memphian site, just click on the headline of the article. You'll see that you're watching, I think, the embedded video, and there's a comment section at the bottom. I will get those comments and I can ask any questions that you all have as you're listening. But next up is a sponsor message. Hutchinson School, coincidentally, alma mater of Cindy Brewer. So let's hear from our sponsor, Hutchinson School.
What I love about my teachers at Hutchinson is that they're really understanding when you get things wrong. They try and teach you through it. They don't tell you the answer, but they teach you through it. I love how they always have your back, and they're never like, just go and do something by yourself. If you need their help, they'll always say yes.
Again, thank you to Hutchinson for being one of the sponsors of today's seminar. Our second speaker is Monica Wharton. She is Executive Vice President and Chief Administrative Officer for Methodist Le Bonheur Healthcare. Monica, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Eric, and thank you to the Daily Memphian for having me today. It is certainly an honor to just share a little bit of my story. And Cindy, thank you so much for your message today. If you all will bear with me as we've talked about COVID and what COVID has brought to us, that means we are participating via Zoom. So I will share my screen now with you all as I reflect on my story. All right, does everyone see up the Daily Memphian in Business? All right, well, again, thank you so much for the opportunity today. My focus is really about finding purpose and serving others. As I thought about today and just, really my life's work and the understanding of where I am today, I recognize I'm not here in isolation, but I am truly standing on the shoulders of others. There's a quote by Maya Angelou that I hold near and dear to me, and that is, I come as one, but I stand on the shoulders of 10,000. It's the understanding, especially as we celebrate African American History Month, that to have an African American female working in corporate America, Clearly, there were some doors that were open for me, for people that I've never met, for people that I have met, who really made sacrifices for me to be where I am today. So as I reflect on my story, what you see here is really my family. It's about my family, my values, and the current role that I have at Methodist Le Bonheur Healthcare. My family, Andre Wharton, my husband, attorney here in Memphis, lifelong Memphian. My 3 boys, Andrew, who is 14 and attends Christian Brothers. My other 2 boys, Arthur and Abram, they are 14, 10, and 8. One of the things that I'll tell you, some people wonder, how did a woman from New Jersey meet a man from Memphis? We met back in college at Hampton University, a historically Black college and university. And what was very clear to my husband, even at a young age when we met, I was a senior in college, he was a junior, is he told me he always intended on coming back to Memphis, that Memphis was his home. He had no intent on moving to New Jersey, but just the idea of the commitment, the understanding that in Memphis, there's so much talent that goes off, gets educated, and leaves our community. Andre thought it was really important to come back home. So really, it's my family every day that really serves as my guiding post, that allows me to do some of the things I'm really fortunate to do. Some people may wonder, why do you put family first? For me, there is never a substitute. I think sometimes some women think we have to make a choice. For me, I recognize that with the right partner, which is my husband, that we would be able to navigate this together. And we had some real significant conversations even before we got married on what that would look like, including the willingness of my husband as my spouse to make sure that we would support each other in our profession, that we would support each other in raising children. And I'm really happy and proud that he has not let me down. We both continue to manage really busy careers, but there is never a moment where our children should doubt that they are the most important things in our life. And so then you go to the values in terms of, what do I believe in? I've mentioned my family, but it's also my community. It's also my faith. And so recognizing that for me, I can do all things through Christ, which is really important as you think about the balance of all of the things that we're tasked with on a daily basis. Having that foundation of faith is critical. And then also integrity and perseverance. So when I think about integrity, it's amazing. At Methodist, during each of our meetings, we start off with the power of one moment. And so this morning, the power of one moment was actually from Maya Angelou, and it was on just doing right, which goes to my core of integrity. And I just want to share a few words. She said, when you just do right, it fills our souls. It gives you a safety that the best security officer cannot provide if you just do right. One of the reflections was, when you just do right, it's not always going to be easy. It's not always going to be quick, but you'll be able to go to sleep at night. And that's really one of the core values that I've lived, really allowed to be the foundation of my life. Probably one of the best reviews I've ever had from one of my superiors. I'll never forget. They said, Monica, you tell me what I don't want to hear, even when I know I need to hear it. And to me, that spoke volumes and really goes back to the integrity. So what do I currently do? I'm the Executive Vice President and Chief Administrative Officer of Methodist Le Bonheur Healthcare. We're very proud to serve the Memphis community and surrounding region. We have 6 hospitals, 5 adult hospitals. We have Le Bonheur, our pediatric hospital. As the CAO, I am responsible for IT, HR, corporate legal, corporate risk management, and I'm also part of our 10-person strategy team. What I love every day is I get to work alongside 13,000 associates that are dedicated to providing exceptional care to this community. And we really do live our mission. During the time of this pandemic, we have been challenged, as everyone has, in unimaginable ways. But I have been able to see my colleagues, our frontliners, truly live out the mission of this organization. because we all know people have been stretched. And this really goes back to my core value of making sure you do something that is purposeful, that you do it with integrity, and that you are serving others. And so I find myself in this space of being at Methodist Le Bonheur Healthcare. I'm very proud to be a part of our organization. And so just wanted to share a little slide with you. I don't know if you all can see it yet. Let's see. Looks like the screen is frozen. Okay, there we go. What we have here, again, I mentioned I'm from New Jersey. I spent a lot of time growing up at the Newark Public Library. My mother and father, they were divorced at a young age, but my mother, who worked 3 jobs to make sure that her daughter would have an exceptional education. I did not go to Hutchinson, but I went to Mount St. Dominic Academy, a single-sex school, all females. It was a wonderful experience. It truly laid the foundation. But my mother worked 3 jobs, and what I always understood and what she told me and my siblings is the expectation was you would do well in school. My mother believed that education was the most important thing and that it was truly the way out. And so as part of that at Newark Public Library, that's where I was first introduced to lawyers and others who were serving community, because I met those people through books. And it was in the African American section at the Newark Public Library where I spent my time, because again, the goal was don't get in trouble, make sure you're doing what you need to for school. And so I spent a lot of time there, and that really started that foundation of service and getting me involved in the legal profession. Inroads, I was a participant in a program called Inroads, which is focused on ensuring that at-risk and urban students are afforded an opportunity to go to college. So I spent my Saturdays at Inroads with some wonderful mentors who introduced me to the process of getting into college. They helped with applications, and they also introduced me to careers. I'll never forget, Inroads was located in Newark, New Jersey, but there was I believe it was a Saturday, it could have been a weekday, but we went to New York City. And I remember going to the office of a corporate lawyer who was an African-American female. I had never met one in my life. Honestly, looking at her office, it was small. There were lots of books and papers. And I said to myself, no, I don't know if that's really that exciting. But it was seeing her, because when you see someone, you then recognize that you too have the opportunity, that this is a path that you can take. So forever indebted to Inroads. NAACP, when I was 13, joined the, when I was in high school, joined the NAACP youth chapter in Montclair, New Jersey. And the reason I tell this story, it's amazing how small the world is. So again, my mom said, make sure you keep yourself busy. During those times, you open the yellow pages. It wasn't your cell phone or looking on the computer. But I opened the yellow pages, looked up the NAACP, called and asked, do you have a youth chapter? I'd like to get involved. And I remember the person on the other line, they said, no, we don't currently have one that is active, but if you're interested, you can start it. And so started the NAACP youth chapter back, met a woman by the name of Pat Ramsey. Again, I was in Montclair, New Jersey at that time, in high school. Fast forward, when Andre and I meet at Hampton University, while I'm a senior, he's a junior, his neighbor was Maxine Smith. Maxine Smith was the aunt of Pat Ramsey, my youth advisor from the NAACP. Shows how small the world is. And I remember going to the late Miss Maxine Smith's home with my mother-in-law, who the family lived across the street. She said, oh, I want to introduce you to this young lady that Andre's brought home. And we're talking, and she said, oh, my niece lives there, Pat Ramsey. And I said, oh my goodness, that's my youth advisor. So it shows you just how small these roads are and how they often will come together. But also, that all roads were leading to Memphis, even when I didn't realize it at a young age. Hampton University, I've mentioned, that was my home by the sea, is my home by the sea, where I went to college, and then William and Mary. I brought these, I show you these pictures today. As you can see, the first picture, that's when I was the young Monica Robinson back then. I believe I was probably about 18 months. That second picture, I am the first person on the picture, and then the two girls to the right of me. What's interesting is I was eliminated from a program when I was in kindergarten. And anybody who's a kindergartner, you might recognize, at least for me, I didn't know what eliminated meant, okay? And so it was my first touch of failure, I would say, in life. So I was eliminated because couldn't get the dance moves. I couldn't catch on. So all the kindergartners were allowed to participate. And the teacher, she finally said, Monica, I can't help you on this. And she said, so you are eliminated. And my aunt worked at the school. And I remember afterwards, I said, I got eliminated from the play today. And she said, oh, that's not good. You're not in the play. But honestly, they found another role for me. I winded up doing a singing part. I'm not a singer. Okay, so we didn't pivot to that. But what it showed me was you can bounce back from failure, right? And that there are opportunities for you that you may not even know exist in life, but just be open-minded. The next photo is of my dad, Arthur D. Robinson Sr. My father passed away when I was 17. And when you think about putting hope in your children, I'll never forget when my dad was passing away. He was at, the hospital. Each of his children, we had an opportunity to spend time with him. And he looked at me. My dad had not gone to college, but he was a hard worker. He was a man of tremendous faith and just exceptional integrity, just a really good man. But I remember him laying there and he looked at me. He said, Monica, you will go to college. You will do well. You will graduate. You will go to law school. He said, I'd be a judge. I had an appointment through Governor Haslam, an interim appointment. So I'll say I accomplished that for my dad. But to put that hope in your child, even when you haven't seen what the path ahead, those are the things that served as foundation for me. I was 17 years old at the time. I was a senior in high school. And it's his words that really just put that extra push in me as an individual. And that's why, regardless of the challenges that I deal with at work, I always recognize it's going to be okay. Again, integrity, perseverance, doing the right thing. And so I've always said, making sure that you put that in someone else on a daily basis. Me and my husband, we try and put it in our children, but I also try to ensure that I serve as a mentor and put it back to others. I'm going to share one more slide because I believe we're out of time. And so I'm just going to pivot, if you all don't mind, to just a few leadership lessons that I'd like to share. So these are some things that I believe in. Great things are never done by one person. They're done by a team of people. That's from Steve Jobs. Teamwork is so important. There is nothing that I do on a daily basis that can be accomplished alone. You got to do it with a team. Surround yourself with great people, people that you trust, that you respect, and that you allow to have a voice at the table. Challenge yourself to ask who's missing at the table. Very often we sit at tables, some that we couldn't have even imagined that we're provided the ability to serve at. But if you sit at the table, you have a responsibility to ask yourself, who else should be there? Intentionality is key. And then recognize the transformation that occurs when you fail. In life, things aren't always going to go along a straight and narrow path, but when you do, when things don't work out, how do you pivot? Okay, and how do you use that as an experience of learning? And then make sure you listen to understand, don't listen to reply. I think listening is key. The best thing someone can tell me is, I came to you and you listen. But take that listening and move it to action. Leaders build other leaders. Always ask yourself, who are you grooming? Not only to fill the role that you fill currently, but to help them get to the next level. And then also don't be afraid to get vulnerable. It's through vulnerability that we have change. And it's through vulnerability sometimes that there'll be tough conversations, but people will value you because they understand that you'll tell them, one, the truth, when there is a concern, when there is uncertainty, but we'll be willing to lean into those tough conversations in life. So I just want to thank you for allowing me a moment just to share a few words. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it.
No, thank you. That is amazing. Thank you very much. I have known you casually for some years, and I didn't know that story, and so that was a really great thing to hear. A couple of questions, and I'll do these questions, I think, right now, just kind of more about the business side of this conversation, and then we'll get to other questions as we get into the Q&A with all of y'all. But I asked this question of Cindy, are there things that, I mean, Methodist has been, obviously as a hospital, I mean, it has been front and center from day one of this pandemic. Before it really was on the broader population's consciousness, it was, I'm sure, on you all beginning to think about what could this do and where are we going? What has, I mean, what is, I guess this is a general question. What has the last 12 months been like for you, for the people around you, being in the center of this really horrible thing?
You know, it's been tough. I mean, I can't tell you it's been other thing but tough. When you look at associates who are stretched, especially our frontliners, who are seeing death at a rate that we have never experienced before, you know, that weighs heavy on your heart. But also what weighs heavy on our heart is when we know that things like, you know, wearing a mask, washing your hands, you know, if you're eligible, get vaccinated. Those are the things that are even tougher, because we know that there are people who are literally sacrificing their lives every day. And so we ask everyone to make sure that, you know, you do your part so that these individuals can go home to their families, so that we can all come together again and celebrate birthdays and anniversaries and spend time with family and go to events, as Cindy mentioned, in terms of what her company does. So it's been a tough 12 months, but what it's also been is an opportunity to see the resilience of an amazing team, because our team doesn't complain. Every day, there are men and women who come to our organization every day to serve. And that's what this is about. They're here to serve patients, serve them without judgment, serve them to make sure that they can return to their families. You know, as the pandemic started, there were a lot of things that changed. I mean, we had to stop our elective procedures. Our volume went down significantly as a result of that. But it also meant that for visitation, families were not coming into hospitals at the same, were not allowed to come into hospitals to visit with their families. So that also meant that our nurses, in addition to being care providers, were being an extension of family, where they were holding hands at very difficult times. And so making sure that we're able to provide support to our nurses, to our EVS workers, to let them know, not only do we see you, but we feel you. And we want to help you as you go through this time. And so, yes, it's been a difficult few months, but I'm forever humbled by our organization and the people that, regardless of everything that's going on, they come to work every day to serve patients.
I have many. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep moving forward, and we'll come back to questions with you, Monica, as well as with Cindy. And again, for all of you watching, you can ask questions. If you're watching on YouTube, there's a comment section, a chat section, excuse me, right next to the video. Just put a question in there or in the comment section on YouTube. Or if you're watching on the Daily Memphian site, you can go to the bottom of the article in which this is embedded, this video is embedded, put a comment in there as a question, and I will get that to our speakers today. For now, I'm going to introduce one more sponsor before we do our third speaker. Our third sponsor today is Reynolds, Bone, and Griesbeck.
At RBG, we challenge and inspire our people and clients to achieve their goals while creating lasting legacies. We would love for you to join us at future RBG Connects events, which is an opportunity for networking with women in business in the Mid-South community. Community and respect are core values at RBG. We are committed to creating an inclusive and equitable culture that reflects the communities we serve and respects, encourages, and supports our employees. RBG supports women in business. Many thanks to Daily Memphian.
Again, thanks to our sponsors, all of them today. We really appreciate it. We couldn't do this without them. Our third speaker will be here live in a moment, but because we had to end up having to reschedule this, given the snow and the ice and the outages of power and internet and just general nonsense last week, She was nice enough. She had a conflict right around this time, so she pre-recorded a message. Lori Spicer Robertson is VP of Diversity and Inclusion at Saks Fifth Avenue. Here's her pre-recorded message today, and then she'll be here for the Q&A very, very shortly. So again, a message from Lori Spicer Robertson.
As we start the Lattisphere conversation, or really a look at my career journey, I will do so in 3 phases. I live my life in phases, and so today will be no different. And the first is really about the lattice over the ladder. And the beginning of my career journey started with me believing I was going to be an anesthesiologist. I was a pre-med student all the way through my junior year, but fortunately God saw different, and I had an internship that summer that exposed me to an OBGYN and all the things that come with that, delivering babies, learning about the female anatomy. And I learned quickly that I did not like blood and I did not like needles. And so probably not a career path for an anesthesiologist. I quickly went back to my guidance counselor and shared that I wanted to change my major. I wasn't sure what the direction was, but I knew I wanted to be a leader somewhere in the space, and so I changed to business management. Fortunately, I was exposed to business and communications, which I really had never heard of communications as a career path ever. And so that really enlightened me and sparked something in me, and I applied to graduate schools in public relations and landed at the University of Florida, which is where I did my graduate study. And while I was there, I had an opportunity to meet a young lady, Tracy, who had gone through the program. She worked for the College of Nursing, and she was looking for an intern. And I shared with her I didn't have any prior course work experience in public relations, but I would work really hard. I was a fast learner, and she hired me. And so that job really changed my path, because everything I knew about public relations, I learned right there on the job. She was an excellent leader, and she helped me grow and understand the profession in a very practical way and how I could apply it to future experience. In that role, I also met a woman who was over the American Association of Colleges of Nursing. And she was executive director, and she's like, I love how you've turned just this program around, the work that you're doing, the writing, your magazines that you've done for the College of Nursing. If you ever want to move to DC, I will hire you. Funny thing is, DC was the only city I ever wanted to live in after I graduated college, and so I took her up on that offer. I think my learning lesson for that first phase was that relationships or connections were what you needed in order to go from a lattice over the ladder. The theme for phase 1 was really the power of connections and how you leverage these connections and relationships to navigate a lattice over a ladder. Because so often we're taught that to arrive at career success, you have to follow a straight line and climb the ladder and take every step the same way. But I think the lattice is a challenge for you, right? It's something different, it's unknown, it's charting unknown territory and using those relationships to learn new career opportunities, learn new skills so that you can arrive at what your defined vision of success is. As I continued in my career, I continued through public relations. I moved from DC back to Memphis, being closer to family, and it was a great opportunity. I learned a lot, I met a number of people, but I also saw a very different Memphis, and it was exciting. It was thrilling. Many of my other friends had moved home, and so there was a surge of just young adults, young professionals everywhere in the community. I think I had built a platform for myself. Just working at the chamber, being exposed to people and meetings and conversations that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to be a part of before. But I soon realized that my passion lied in people. And so as you think about phase 2 of my career journey, it's really about people over platforms. And at a young age, I made the choice to say, I want to make a commitment to this community. I see there are need in a number of areas, and how can I be on the ground to support that change and really arrive at this brink of greatness that I continue to hear people talk about in terms of Memphis. And so I continued in my career in public relations, working for the chamber, making additional connections. But I soon realized that a career path I wanted to pursue was community relations, volunteerism, or community engagement. And I shared that with my leader, which is always a great example of a wonderful leader for you, and a coach. And she said, we don't have that here, but when I see it, I will absolutely support you in pursuing that opportunity. And so the opportunity came, and I moved from the chamber to work for Regional One Health now, also known as the Med then. And it was, again, a new position, a new role to really create a volunteer program for the hospital, to further engage the hospital in the community so that it can be embedded wherever it was located. And I loved it. It was a great experience to get those who worked inside the walls of the hospital to be more visible and have a presence in our communities and helping people understand the value and the need of their health care and their health journey. Phase 2 was really about being impassioned about my community and choosing people over platforms, because I wanted to ensure that I am creating opportunities where everyone can thrive. As I move into the final phase of my career story, I reflect on a text that my uncle sent in our family group text when I first received my most recent assignment as Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for Saks Fifth Avenue. And he said, of course, we are incredibly proud of you, but I am not shocked or surprised about this next leg of your journey because we raised you to be a first. And my family and my friends have truly been my support system. I get emotional as I think about his text because when I reflect and look back and rewind throughout every step of my career, I have been a first in every position. Every position was newly created. I think it fed into my spirit of being a change agent and really working to touch lives and transform cultures. And so it's no surprise that that's what the work is I do today for Saks Fifth Avenue, and really making sure we're creating a strategy and an environment where everyone feels like they are valued, seen, and heard, but also that they're challenged. And as I look at my career journey, every step of the way there has been challenge over challenge to overcome. But I love the quote that a friend shared with me, that everyone wants the diamond, but rarely do they want the pressure. And in order for us to grow and evolve, we have to seek these new opportunities. We have to go where we've never gone before. And this last phase theme is really about change. I like to say that I'm a bi-professional because my alpha job is serving at Saks Fifth Avenue, but I created another world called Wonder, which is really about making sure women and mothers are seizing their joy and that they are arriving at their defined success. There was a point in my life as a new mom where I was trying to figure out how to navigate career and life and how to integrate the two. And so I wanted to make sure I was building a platform for women and mothers to do the same with each other and have that peer-to-peer mentorship and relationship. And so I hope that you have enjoyed the Lattisphere, really hearing about my career journey. But I continue to share and make sure I implore others to be a tool in the lives of others. Make sure that you are seeking opportunities where you can serve over striving, because at the end of the day, we are all here to touch each other and serve in the lives of those in need. And so again, thank you, Daily Memphian, for sharing this space. I hope you have enjoyed my story, and I hope that you are inspired to continue to take those new opportunities in uncharted territories.
And again, thanks to Lori for pre-recording that message, again, because of the logistics of the snow and ice, so on, last week. But Lori Spicer Robertson is here. Lori, thanks for joining us. And you almost could have made it and done it live, but we loved having a pre-recorded message. So thanks for being here.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Honored to come and share.
Before we get to the Q&A with everyone, I'll ask you the question more on the business side of stuff. Just, the last year has been obviously difficult for everyone. I mean, for you and your role and for Saks, I mean, what have been the real impacts that you've had to deal with from a business point of view in the last year?
I think just pace of work, right? Since last year, especially people who work in diversity, equity, inclusion, I like to joke and say this work is always slow and steady. And I would say last year accelerated everyone. And so we're still feeling that acceleration this year. Everyone I've spoke to who works in DEI space is like, if I can just make it to April the next quarter, I will be good. I think also just the pace of work because of technology, because we're virtual, how things move in an organization has also shifted. And I think with all the change, people are adjusting. So if you were an organization that was also slow and steady, COVID has shifted your associates or employees to move a little bit quicker and faster. I think in addition to the DEI space, people are also a little more aware of challenges and inequities, and people are sensitive to everything. And so helping people navigate that space, I think, as you are continuing to build your culture and transform lives is everyday work. And so it's been busy.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to come back to a number of things you just brought up, but I want to bring everybody in to do that. So why don't we do this? Why don't we, we'll hear from our last two sponsors, RJ Young and AutoZone, and then we'll be right back for questions Q&A with all three of our guests. And again, if you're watching and you want to ask a question, you can go to the article in which this video is embedded. If you're on the Daily Memphian site, just go down to the comments and put a question there. Or you, if you're on YouTube, or you can switch over to YouTube, there's a chat function, there's a comment section. I will see those questions if you have any and get them to our guests. So right now, though, we will hear from our last two sponsors.
RJ Young has fantastic women who work and lead within our company, and we are proud to sponsor an event that focuses on honoring and supporting the women in business in Memphis.
No. Seriously?
Oh, come on. No.
You for real?
Dale.
Really?
Wow.
So maybe just a cable?
We can help you.
Welcome to America's #1 battery destination, AutoZone, your battery solution.
Again, thank you to all of our sponsors today. We appreciate them very much and would not be possible to do these without them. Again, normally this series is done in person in normal times. We usually do them at the Brooks Museum and the very nice amphitheater there. Then we have drinks and cheese after. So you can get your cheese and drinks ready wherever you are, and you can have that when we finish in a little bit here. And hopefully sometime, as everyone has alluded to, we will get back to normal times and be able to do these again in person. Some of the other seminars we have done and we will do this year include commercial real estate, focus on small businesses. We have done a Developing Memphis, looking at many of the various projects that are going on. Those from the fall were done virtually, and they're available on the Daily Memphian site. Just search for commercial real estate, Developing Memphis seminar series. And again, hopefully stay in touch with us, and we will, going forward, hopefully get back to in-person ones maybe this summer. I'm a naive optimist, so let's just hold out hope. Let me have everybody unmute themselves, and we'll just do some questions and follow up on some of the things you talked about. And, one of the things that struck me, and it's been reported on a lot, but probably not reported on enough, is that this pandemic has hit everyone hard, right? I don't think very few people haven't been hit hard on this. It's been stressful from a business point of view. It's been stressful from a personal point of view as parents. Every level. But women have been hit harder, particularly in the workplace. The numbers of women and the stats on women who've dropped out of the workplace are kind of astonishing. And maybe I'll come back to you, Lori, because you were beginning to maybe touch on some of this and what you've seen, whether it's at Saks or just among your peers or among your friends. I'm naive enough to have thought, and I had a single working mom when I was a little kid, and she worked her whole life. That maybe we were past some of this, farther past what the numbers show, that once everyone had to go home, once kids were home, the burden fell not just disproportionately, but wildly disproportionately to women who needed, for all kinds of reasons, or made the choice to, or were forced to go home and leave the workforce. Your thoughts on that dynamic and what you've seen?
Yeah, it's funny. I was having a conversation with one of my colleagues today who we have a project that's just, it's busy season, right? In the retail world, everything's going to market. Fashion shows are now virtual. And so meetings that would have been compacted have now been expanded all throughout this month and next month. But she too is a mother of young boys who I think are 7 and 3. And every woman or mother, especially that I've spoken to, it's been a difficult time because you're managing work, whether you are physically going to work, working virtually. A number of people are trying to also manage virtual school or asynchronous schedules at home. But I think the other piece that some workplaces didn't even consider, because we had this conversation, depending on where you are in age and where your parents are, not only were you being parent, wife, caretaker of your household, then you also became caretaker of your parents or elderly members in your family. And so as COVID progressed, you wanted to be extra precautious. And if you had anyone in your home who was of a senior age or someone who could be highly affected, then that added a layer of additional pressure to you. And so I think just the virtual world, there aren't a lot of boundaries from what I've seen for people who work at home or who are just working during COVID period. And it's a nonstop cycle. And so just trying to manage that. I had a friend who just said the other day, and I shared it, same sentiments, that I just want to sit in a room and be quiet and be still by myself. The TV doesn't need to be on, just nothing.
Yeah.
And I think, everyone is at home now in each other's space, right? Your spouse, your kids, and it's just a consistent cycle. But I think making that choice, right, to say, what's most important to me? Where do my values lie? A lot of women had to make the choice to say, I can't manage both, right? My family is extremely important. And right now they're the priority. And so I may have to step away from the workplace. Yeah. Not going to be able to balance it.
Cindy, let me bring you back in with the same questions. I mean, the thoughts on what you've seen in this dynamic, either in the, with employees or friends or just broadly, this dynamic of so many women dropping out of the workforce, which right before the pandemic, I think as a nation, we crossed the line where women were there were slightly more women than men in the workplace.
Right. I agree with all of Lori's points. I mean, it's been really hard. And, there's been several times this year and even into, 2020 that I thought would change in 2021 and it hadn't, where I'm like, what else can break me? Like, good Lord, like, it just keeps coming. And it is hard. And I think a lot of it, the women in our workforce and in our industry, yes, this whole shift is working where we already were in live events, working 24/7 weekends, nights. We're now working. I mean, we've got a crew that was up starting their workday at 3:00 this morning for a virtual meeting international because that was the time zone that it fell in Central Time Zone. I mean, we're just burning in at all ends and everybody's tired. The whole motto of health, I think, has kind of, gone by the wayside a little bit, and mental health. We struggled too, Eric, with, and still do for a little bit, that we had those stages of grief that started when we all went virtual, and trying to pull different levels of people in your organization out of those stages of grief has been a challenge that I didn't expect that we would be faced with. But thankfully, I think everybody's kind of in a good spot now. It's just hard adjusting to what this new norm is.
And last, same again, question or comment to you, Monica, and your thoughts on what you've seen.
Yeah, so the question for me is, one, can we ever do enough to really help as people are feeling stretched at all ends? As you can imagine, women are stretched, but then you think about some of the women that are in healthcare. Not only are you dealing with the virtual learning and the social justice issues that we've confronted in the last year and a half, but then you're also dealing with seeing COVID up front. And so, you're seeing death, as I mentioned during my discussion, at a much higher rate. And so there are some things that we've really had to lean into as an organization. Healthcare traditionally is just very conservative. So when the discussions first started about working from home, it was kind of working from home. What does that mean, right?
Oh, and I apologize for money. You mean conservative sort of in terms of decision making, not politically conservative. As we come off a political season, you mean it more in that sense, I think. Oh, we may have lost Monica. I should have never interrupted her. I froze. Just being a rude, interrupting Zoom guy, I managed to freeze her video. Why don't we do this? Why don't we go? I'm going to go back to Lori, and I apologize, Monica. That's like all my fault. I do think she meant that, but Lori, in past women in business seminars that we've done, it's always been a great seminar series that we've done, and there's always a lot of sharing of stories from people in the audience as well, not just the speakers. And there are many common themes that have come up that would be very familiar to you all, I'm sure, but I'll repeat some of them, which is that, and it struck me, and something one of y'all said, that women often feel this pressure to be less emotional in the workplace, that there is a higher bar on so many levels for women to be more prepared, to be more careful, to be more self-aware. I mean, that an unfairly high bar, and emotion is part of that. Oh, all the stereotypes but this is a very emotional time, right? I mean, people are stressed out. People have kids running in and out of their Zooms, and the men and women. But do you sense that? How does that dynamic of the higher bar for women come into play in this incredibly stressful and truly very emotional time?
Yeah. I think it depends, right? If you think about, especially leadership, women in leadership, and if you have been raised in like formal, old school days of leadership, sink or swim, being emotional is a weakness. That is how you are trained, regardless if COVID is happening. That is your psyche. And so as women have had to try to endure COVID and balancing work, home life, children, school, parents, everything, death, right? And so I think trying to shed those layers and become more vulnerable has become increasingly difficult. And some women are just like, I can't, right? Like, I'm going to lay it all on the table. Who cares if my kids run behind me with their underwear? As Cindy shared, my kids are always running by the window in the morning. And you just have to let some things go, right? Normally I'd be like, stop, don't do it. But I think you get to a point where you have to think about your own health and sanity, because you just can't control and manage. If nothing else, we learn that we don't have control. And that, I call this 2020 part 2, as we're experiencing Q1 of this year, right? Like, we still do not have control. But I think for women who haven't arrived at that place, it's an added layer of difficulty. I watch some of the women in our organization who you can tell were brought up in that formal, old leadership model, right? Leadership is management versus leadership is coaching. And it's very difficult to be vulnerable. And I feel like it's taxing on them. It's extra weight, and it's probably showing up in their physical health as well, because they are shielding and holding all of that in. But it's unfortunate, right? And I think as women continue to evolve in the workplace and leadership, that I hope this year really shows that, part of being who you are and being authentic is being vulnerable. That is a extremely great trait, I think, of leadership. And if nothing else, it's part of our sanity to go on this year.
Cindy, it's a similar question or comment. I mean, I had somebody say to me recently, I don't know when, I've lost all sense of time, but that they felt, maybe they're naive optimists like me, they felt that we as kind of a country, we as people, that because of some of the things we're all talking about here and that Lori articulated very well, that we all maybe have a little bit more empathy going forward. Do you think that, men and women, that there will be more empathy, more understanding, that we are not just work person and home person? We've blurred those lines and we've seen our vulnerabilities, and so we'll have more empathy going forward.
Yes, I mean, terribly, we've blurred those lines. And, I'll give you an example from our business perspective. Name one virtual meeting that you've seen go well. I mean, when I say that, I mean, perfect without what
Where is Monica? Where is Monica?
And we've got now major corporations that we're doing virtual meetings for. The the Vimeo will go down or YouTube will go. I mean, things completely out of our control, out in the universe. We've had to enter into this whole world of, we feel like we're perfect. And, when I say that we give everything to our customers, we work so hard to do it. We make sure that they're, spot on, perfect, and look great. And there's things that are just out of our control. And you just have to enter into everything. And we've learned for the past, almost it feels like year now, that you have to have a whole lot of grace with every single thing that you do. You have to have grace with your employees. You have to ask for grace with your clients. You have to ask for grace with your family and your friends. And without it, it's very hard. It's very hard to survive.
Yeah. Monica, you are back. I will never interrupt you again. That had to be my main.
Eric, you just sent something through the computer to make me stop.
Well, and as Cynthia was just saying, I mean, have you been on a Zoom conference that has gone perfectly? And we proved that no, it's just not possible. Finish your thought. You were talking about the nurses and the shifts at Methodist. And let me
so what I was referring to is just healthcare in general. So in addition to nurses, you think about corporate. There are some people that we know can't work from home. Our nurses cannot work from home. Physicians cannot work from home. They have to be in the health system to provide care. But for others, it really allowed us to reflect and sit back and say, look, we have associates who have various challenges right now. We need to be flexible. And so as part of that, we sent about 2,000 people home and said, okay, you can go home, you can work. We made sure they had the setup that they needed. And so we had to pivot as an organization. Similarly, when we went to virtual learning, we also said, let's try and bring virtual learning on campus. And so at one of our facilities, we have virtual learning through a partnership with the YMCA. And that runs, I believe it's from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. because recognizing that nurses and others have different shifts. And so making sure people could feel comfortable bringing their child to work, making sure they would get the virtual learning and the lunch. So how can we as an organization be more flexible? And that was one of the things we had to make sure we were willing to embrace. And as we move forward, we still have a number of associates working from home. One of the things our leader asked, Michael Uwicki, was how can we ensure if people are able to work from home, work with the leaders to allow them to continue to do that. If we're still able to move forward with our metrics and all of the things that we need to, we've got to be flexible. And so that tone is really from the top as an organization to say it's okay. And just as I came in, I heard Cindy say grace. We all have to give each other a tremendous amount of grace to say it's not okay. We have had a number of sessions on resilience. We've had a number of sessions with our EAP programming in our facilities where we're going directly to the campuses to make sure that people can get some of the counseling they may need, because we're not okay. And we need to be transparent about that. I talked about that value of being able to get vulnerable with people. And when people hear their leader say, and that's why it's so important to me as a mom, as a wife, I have 3 children, okay? I have a 14-year-old in high school. There are days when it is not okay, okay? And, but I also recognize that I can't do it all. And so making sure at home I have the support that's needed, making sure at work, and I don't take for granted that there are decisions that the 3 women on this call can make, that there are other women that cannot make those decisions in their life just because of their life circumstances.
Right.
So we've been intentional. There have been some other programs we put in place, including our Methodist Associate Advancement Program, where we're partnering with the University of Memphis to make sure that our associates who don't have college degrees, who don't have high school certificates, can get them with no payment from the associate, but from Methodist, because we want to make sure that we're transforming lives. And that's what you have to do to make sure women can make choices. Because again, we cannot take for granted that the 3 women on this call have a different set of life circumstances.
Right.
Let me go kind of big picture here. This is, we've been doing this Women in Business seminar for quite a time with the Daily Memphian since we launched. And prior to that, the old Daily News, we did it for many years. And as I mentioned at the Brooks, this is the first time we've done it. I mean, not that it has anything to do with the seminar series. We have a female vice president, and we have a vice president who is of color. And I'm curious what that means to each of you. And Monica, you're still unmuted, and I'm curious what that means to you. You talked about your journey, and how much progress has been made and how much progress hasn't, and what it means to your, when you, as a mom, and you look at your three, I believe it's 3 boys, a female VP. What does that mean?
So for me, it means that there were a lot of women before me that were opening doors, and some men as well, because we don't do things in isolation. But it also means when I come to work, when I sit at tables, I'm not just thinking about Monica Wharton. I'm thinking about the women that are coming behind me, the women that I need to pull up with me. I'm thinking about the shadow that I cast as a leader. I'll never forget, I was in a meeting, and it's around the time I just had my 3rd son. And I got a call from the then governor at the time about a special appointment for the Supreme Court. And we were at a meeting, and the governor said, now that's a woman there. And I'm paraphrasing his words, but he said she took a call while she was in the hospital about to deliver her child, about an appointment. And I looked around the table and I saw the other young women who were there. And I said, I never want women to think that that's okay. Take the time that you need. If you are on maternity leave, take that time, spend time with your child, get your mental health together. And so every day that I serve, I recognize that there are people that are watching me, that they are looking up to me. And so I have to be careful of that. I mean, it's also a weight too. I mean, I don't think that any of us can pretend that it's not. Although I'm very fortunate, you also become the, so you're the one, right? You are the one. And so as part of that, you have to, again, give yourself grace to pull back, okay? And to not feel that you can solve all of society's ills, because all of us on this call are probably helpers at nature, right? And so we want to help everyone. That's part of our DNA. And you can't do it all. And so it's recognizing that at times I've got to show other women that it's okay to pull back.
Lori, I'll go to you. Again, a female VP and a vice president of color. It's a first. And what does it mean? And what does it mean to you, again, on all fronts?
Yeah, I echo what Monica says. The only thing I would add is just unimaginable excellence and greatness, I'd say, because when the boys were excited about our vice president, Kamala, it did not register to me that when I was their age, that was never even a thought, right? Like that thought never crossed my mind as a possibility. And so they will grow up with the view that this is normal, right? That this is our experience. I think as Monica shared that she's also the first, right? And so many women like her who are in leadership positions, whether it's politics or your specific industry, there is a set of challenges that you have to overcome as a first. I shared in my video before, I never realized that my uncle, when I recently received this job, my uncle sent a text and said, we're very proud of you. Not surprised. We raised you to be a first. And I used to joke and tell the story. My dad is a former basketball player. And so he raised my brother and I to believe that first place is the only place, second place is no place at all. So you can imagine how hard it was to overcome that thought habit in life as you have failure.
No pressure, Lori. No pressure whatsoever.
No pressure. But my husband reminded me, he's like, your uncle is right. If you think about every job you've ever had, you've been the first in that role, right? And so something in your personality gravitates to change, to transformation, to creating things. But I think that also there's no absence of challenge, right? And so how do you overcome that? And how do you balance your own health and wellness? I think either Cindy or Monica mentioned that, because if you have arrived at that position, like our VP, you worked extremely hard to get there. You stood on the shoulders of people before you. But you have to be very cognizant of when it's time for you to step back and rest and recharge, because part of your storytelling or the narrative that you share is that you have to have that resilience, because that also will help transform the lives of people who are watching you. So,
and Cindy,
Eric,
oh, go
can
ahead,
I
Monica.
just say, one of the things too about Vice President Kamala Harris is she represents so much to individuals who have gone to historically Black colleges and universities.
Yeah.
And so putting that stamp on, this is not a mediocre, there is no mediocrity, which we've always known about HBCUs. But to see a woman be able to step into that position, who has that background, who didn't go to Harvard, who didn't go to Yale, but it is a tremendous amount of work and sacrifice that has gotten her there. But then she also opened up the space to thank so many others with tremendous gratitude for getting her to the space where she is allowed to occupy today.
Yeah. Cindy, thoughts on the impact of a female vice president?
It has always been important to me that my children never viewed a hardworking mother, their hardworking mother, as something that their friends as different. That, I intentionally picked the elementary school for both of my sons that had a very robust aftercare program and a very well attended aftercare program, so that it would be the norm, that they weren't the only kids, that the parents weren't coming to pick them up, and the dual working environment. So to see my children see someone excel like Kamala Harris into that position is just even more supporting to me and of my family, that they're, this is it, and this is what you do, and you work hard, and this is where you get. And certainly I've really cherished that it hasn't been the all male, view that they've seen in those leadership positions, and to have a female is very important.
I could talk to you all for another hour. I think we're out of time though, and I know I believe some of you have to get going. So we will end it there. And again, thank you, all three of you, very much for being here and sharing your stories and giving your thoughts. I appreciate it immensely. If you came in late, you will be, and you're watching this, and you want to, and you should watch the whole conversation. You can get it on the Daily Memphian site. Once the video processes, you'll be able to get it on YouTube. So be looking for that. I want to thank one last time our sponsors, Landmark Bank, Hutchison School, Reynolds Bone Griesbeck, the law firm, RJ Young, and AutoZone. Thank you to all three of our speakers today, and thank you for joining us. Again, be looking for other seminars that will come through the spring as we kind of work through this whole COVID situation. But again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.